Next item here is scan probes on port 9200 TCP. This is associated with Elasticsearch. We had been sort of speculating what the motive might be behind this in our previous reports. We're showing 120 days of activity, and it was actually in the beginning of March that we saw sort of an uptick in this activity. Well, it turns out Jordan Wright had done a couple of blogs on this particular topic. One where he was, and this is actually just from yesterday, May 11th, where he had been tracking over 60 days watching hackers attack Elasticsearch. In fact, he had found a vulnerability that perhaps is associated with this particular activity. And you had taken a little bit of a look at this. Any comments?
Really?
Yeah, really.
No. There's like there's remote code execution vulnerabilities, and then there's just a field. There's like, please place the code in that you would like us to execute to run across this search. And at some point fairly recently, they're like, oh, maybe we should put that into the Java sandbox, which is basically a discredited sandbox. It's very clear it's a thing that's easy to break out of. So it's a convenient feature, but like literally you provide the code that you want it to run, and it runs it. That's the vuln.
Right.
So,
to have a feature like this in a closed environment, we talk oftentimes about having layers of defense, and if your only layer of defense is a sandbox, it's probably not a good defense.
It's a very good point that this feature is totally fine if you are running the code as kind of a local thing.
Right.
But by default, it wasn't installed on a local thing. It listened on all interfaces on port 9200, and then shockingly now people are scanning everything on the internet on 9200. So hopefully this is getting managed.
Yeah, and there is the potential, like we saw with the bash vulnerability, that where there is the potential that perhaps there is a front-end interface to an Elasticsearch system. Perhaps they're not scanning port 9200 here, but it could be a web interface that would potentially expose this vulnerability as well, I presume.
Yeah. That's probably going to happen and not be a good day. So I would actually say it'd be a very good idea. Always thinking about actionable intelligence. Monitor your web logs. Look for the sort of patterns that only happen on stuff that gets forwarded to Elasticsearch.
Right.
Look for this stuff in your architecture. This is why you really want to have an inventory of what code is being exposed. I always like to talk about the most million important lines of code that are being exposed to attackers that would cause problems across the global internet. It should be the same for your organization. It's okay to use open source. Everyone does, and it's really good stuff. But when there's problems like this, especially as you say, what you're doing is doing what John Lambert at Microsoft calls not thinking in terms of lists, but thinking in terms of graphs. It's not just what's exposed on 9200, it's what's exposed on 80 that forwards stuff to 9200. Because that is how you find really good attacks.
Yeah, good from an attacker's point of view.
Well, yes.